Hi, welcome to my eclipse guide. So the upcoming eclipses are 26th of May, lunar eclipse, and the South Node eclipse in Sagittarius, full moon in Sagittarius at 5 degree. And on 10th of June, the second eclipse, solar eclipse, or North Node eclipse at 19 degrees of Gemini. So in this video, I just want to give you here an overview of what's coming, and then below there will be timestamps for you to pick and choose if you wish to watch one thing and not the other. So I'm going to start by talking about the eclipses in general, and then this particular one, and then narrow it even down further to how you can work with it through your own chart, Then I'll be talking about the mutable T square that will have both eclipses formed by Jupiter and then Neptune, and the role Vesta in Virgo plays in stabilizing that quite volatile energy. Then the following section will be on Mercury in Gemini, retrograde, during the eclipses, and meeting Venus. And I'll be also mentioning how that ties us back into the Pluto-Saturn conjunction, which is something I like bringing up regularly, so we don't forget. Not that anyone will ever forget 2020, but yeah, it's important to remember there is a bigger story arc here happening, arc or arch, I don't know, that we are wise to kind of keep referring back to, for our bearings, to just kind of keep heading in the right direction. Then I'll be talking about Mars in Cancer, because Mars answers to this eclipse, to the moon, to this eclipse season. And it's going to be opposing Pluto, so the opposition will be building up, and then will be exact 6th of June. So that is possibly what most people have been feeling most powerfully. I imagine Mars is something we can so easily tap into. We don't need subtle meditative, intuitive states for recognizing Mars. So from what I'm seeing and observing around me, I'm hearing that the most. Then I'll be talking a little bit about Chiron sextiling the North Node and trining the South Node, and what the difference between those two aspects and those two nodal points mean for us, and how we can work with it. And then I'm going to touch on retrogrades. So we have Pluto and Saturn retrograding during the eclipses, and then Neptune and Jupiter are going going retrograde after the eclipses, but they are during the eclipse season, they're on the degrees that they will station retrograde, so that's also significant. And that's it. And I also want to make an announcement before I go into the videos, that I have opened my first astrology school that I've done, and I call it the Astrology Summer School of Shadows. And it's all on my website. I'll link the page, the only page you'll need to get everything you need to know about it. Also ask me any questions. Feel free, please, to email me if you have any questions about becoming a student, or the school, or material, or anything. So we will be, there is an application process, the deadline for that to submit the application, which is not a lengthy application. You'll see what I mean when you go to the page. The deadline for that is 13th of June. And then your learning journey would be starting on 23rd of June. And then we meet for the first time on 30th of June. So Wednesdays, 8 p.m. UK time will be when we'll be meeting. If I have more than certain quota of people, I might have two groups, so that potentially could be another day, but I'm not sure. I don't know whether I'll have enough people for two groups. Basically, it's an intense and very intimate journey through your 12 houses. And the way I want to create the course or the school, the experience, really, I want to give you an experience that you will remember, but also that will be very fruitful, and you'll have a big takeaway, as in you will very clearly see how you moved from one level of self-knowledge and understanding and your use of astrology in understanding yourself, right? And then at the end of it, you'll have another piece where you easily, hopefully, be able to see the difference and what kind of journey you made, and what difference the course made, or the school made for you. So it's through the 12 houses. We have 15 weeks, because only there'll be a few meetings where not to do with the houses and us working with the houses. It's self-study, so I don't teach as such. I'll give you study material, and I do give you definitely guidance every week in the run-up to the week we are meeting. But essentially, it's you doing the homework, and in the group time together, we are sharing what we learn. You're sharing what you learn based on my videos that are guiding you and giving you, you know, overview and how to work with your first, second, third, or other houses. And there will be also mandatory $11 worth of 6 ebooks by Michelle Fallis, which are fantastic, and she's given me a discount. But other than that, I have no, I don't have any incentive for selling, you know, for you buying those books. It's just that I think they're fantastic for all levels. I keep going back to them. I think she's one of the unsung heroes of astrology. At least I don't see her being, I don't see her around much, but I think she's amazing. So that's what I meant by unsung hero. Maybe just in my circles, even though I do sing her praise as often as I, you know, as I remember her, which is, yeah. Okay, so the school has started, as in the enrollment has started. The application is up on my website. If you're interested, yeah, hopefully I will see you there. And now back to the eclipses. So eclipses are the perfect time for shadow work. My experience of eclipses is that I literally have a really palpable sense of being different, like before and after, because of what happens during the eclipses. And because they're like really, it's like time warps, energies are ramped up, intensity, everything is on steroids, everything is amplified. So if you think of it that way, that's how I think of it, certainly, is then anything we do is amplified. So if I'm doing shadow work as per the eclipse of that time, I will make strides, evolutionary strides, hence being so different. And of course, when I say I'm being so different, I don't mean that I'm literally unrecognizable, but there is a clear sense that whatever I walked into the eclipse season with, it's gone. It's been cleared out of my system. It's been changed. Something has, it's shifted. It's not there anymore. Not in the same way that it was. That is a given, certainly for me. I know many people see eclipses as fated times. My personal experience, never. I never really had any fated encounters during, or even fated anything during the eclipses. Maybe, you know, my last famous words, but so far, no. It's this piece that I feel that I've either just been tossed and thrown about, like being, you know, completely agency-less and powerless, seeming, right, thinking that I am, to actually going, right, let me ride this wave, and because when you ride it, you're gonna cover mileage that you couldn't otherwise, right? And it's it's the power of that wave, energetic wave the eclipses give us. So so that's the first piece, about the general piece about the eclipses. So the second one is the eclipses are collective evolution, which is kind of like this wave piece. So because this is for all of us, the more of us does shadow work, the more good we will bring to the world, collectively speaking. So it's like I say, it's where the world is headed. And the evolutionary piece there is that we are going from south node. Eclipses are basically sun and moon dancing very closely to the either south or north node, or both. So south node is where we are coming from, and we need to leave behind because we are headed for the north node. So that journey is the evolutionary journey. Now, the reason it's evolutionary in the sense that we are changing is because, and why it's difficult, is because South Node is what we identify most with. And so essentially it's like having to leave ourselves behind, the ourselves that we are so familiar with, we are so comfortable with. We have figured ourselves out, this is who we are, right? So now we have to leave that if we are to evolve and head towards our north node, which is far away, We may never reach it, and that's not the point. The point is the journey. But it's because it's so far away, it's unfamiliar to us. So we are reluctant because it's like, what is in that Gemini area? I don't know. I mean, I can read so many books, but it's all of it alien to me because I don't really relate to it. I can feel like that, right? And yet, if we are kind of, listening in to ourselves as we contemplate the North Node, this current one, or our own personal, we will very much sense the resonance with it, even though it's unfamiliar. It will be unfamiliar in the sense that we haven't experienced it, or we haven't got recollection, such a clear one, of us being it, living it, doing it, or whatever. But actually, we really resonate with its value, with its message, right? But we've never done it, so that's the kind of reluctance. So with the South Node currently Sagittarius, so for all of us, one kind of big sort of the overarching piece with Sagittarius is beliefs. Is that where we formulate our beliefs? In that, in a Sagittarius portion of our chart, it's where we formulate our beliefs. So with the South Node transiting for the last year and this year, we really are asked to disidentify ourselves with old beliefs that we held for decades. And for some of us, depending what you have, if you have South Node in Sagittarius, this is lifetimes, many past lives of certain kinds of beliefs that you brought into this life. So that's a particularly heavy story for you. But for us, who don't have South Node in Sagittarius, we will still have a Sagittarius part in our chart. And then we may have other kind of stelliums of Sagittarius or planets there. So that bundle or the area in our chart, beliefs that we have around that part of our chart, and the ones that we're particularly hung up on, like, or rather, is that the expression, like, we're, who are we without this belief? If I'm to let go of this, if I don't think like this anymore, who am I then? What kind of person am I if I don't think like that, right? So this is the big piece, right, that's happening for all of us. And then, like I said, depending on where it is in your chart. And then, so the North Node is in Gemini is asking us, the antidote to Sagittarius is humor. And what I mean by that, not so much actually humor. So I was looking, what's the opposite of serious? Non-serious, I can't think of a better word. Silly, maybe. So Sagittarius is can be very serious, like takes himself seriously, too seriously, and can be very pompous and very sort of self-righteous and I know best, right? Because he went through the from the first to the Scorpio. I mean, at the end of Scorpio, you want some respite. You want to say, I know this now. We went after Scorpio, which is when Sagittarius comes after it. We went through hell, and then we survived it. And we want to make sense of what we've been through. And so we make sense of it to the point that we just, to begin with, it's like a raft. It keeps us safe, and it gives us, and then we build a house on it. And when we build the next thing, we build a whole town and the whole village and the country even. And that's Sagittarius, like more and more and more. And all of this because once, when we first came out of the 8th house and the hell he put us through, we did need some kind of structure. We needed a framework. We needed a system to make sense of what we've been through. But we just got too comfortable and too, we loved it too much, or we just the inertia is there, and we just kept going to find ourselves obese in our belief system, right? That we're just so big now, we can't see, our feet, we can't see where we are going with this belief. It's just not healthy, basically, for us. But it was once upon a time, and that's kind of Sagittarius piece. And in order to kind of stay in that belief, system, it becomes too serious. It's like, it has to be serious, because how dare anyone challenge this? How dare anyone dismantle this? Gemini does exactly that. Gemini is like, is comfortable not committing to a belief. In fact, that's, we can talk about that being a shadow, but not here and not today, because that's not where I'm going with this. But it could be if it's taken into a different direction. But at the root of it, Gemini is, or rather the starting point before it becomes a shadow, the good piece there is that nothing's taken too seriously. Life is just not adventure, but it's just this like exploration, which is kind of, I suppose, adventure as well, but it's more like curiosity or like, oh, I wonder what that is, and it's just going, it's just, oh, okay, that's that, and then you move to the next thing, and it's that kind of butterfly, light touch, light feet. I mean, Hermes has what do you call them, wings on his feet, meaning he's just, there's no light, there's no weight to it. And that's kind of sometimes, you know, people's problem with Gemini. They're not deep, they're not serious. Well, they're not, and there's nothing wrong with that. I personally like it. Okay, I'm biased, but anyway. So my point is, the antidote to this will be to just not take yourself too seriously and your beliefs, and to, so that I'll talk about this actually in the, when I go specific with the T Square and Vesta and all that in the next part of the video. But that's the dance during this eclipse. So your beliefs, and your beliefs will be identified and defined by that you need to work through this during this eclipse, is where you have the house, where you have Sagittarius, and then whatever you have there, the ruler of the house, where is it? So all the kind of technical astrology stuff, or just listen to yourself and what it is that you are kind of like getting too self-righteous and precious about. What it is that you are like, this is who I am, and you're not gonna shake me, you're not gonna change me, you're gonna, you know, and bullish, you know, becoming a bit bullish energetically, not necessarily physically, about these aspects of you, like demanding, indirectly demanding, you know, being seen as right or as wise. That's another piece that Sagittarius loves, you know, shadow expression, loves being seen as wise and guru-like, you know. So, and that's Sagittarius shadow, is that he wants to convert everyone else into their own opinions. And I have Mars in Sag, and I know what I'm talking about. So all these things will be coming up. So even if you don't know your astrology, just watch for those triggers in you, and look for where the belief is. And if you're happy with your setup, and if you don't mind that kind of, you know, being seen as, or being rejected for being bullish, for being self-righteous, for thinking that you're smarter or wiser than the next person or whatever, then yeah, that's it. Just own it. It's who you are, and some will like it, you know. But if you're not happy with what your life is throwing at you as a result of you being this way, that's, you know, that's, you need to do the work, right? Because, you know, being happy is essentially you telling yourself that I want to change this, right? So that's the shadow work piece there. So I want to first talk about the Mutable T Square and the role Vesta plays in stabilizing it. So a T Square is two oppositions and the square to that opposition. So the opposition in our case is the nodal axis, south node in Sagittarius and the north node in Gemini, and then in different times we have Sun and the Moon on either ends or both ends or whatever. So that opposition, that axis, is being squared first time around at a lunar eclipse by Jupiter on 26th of May from Pisces, and second time around on 10th of June by Neptune, also in Pisces. And so T-squares are... the volatility of this T-square is firstly because it's mutable signs, so it's like they're kind of all over the place, right? Mutables are mutable by definition. They're kind of changing, they're not stable in themselves, and that's their power. Now T-square, it's like having this tension between the south node and in Sag and the north node in Gemini, and then Sun and Moon, depending when, right? But let's say at the Jupiter position and T-square, we have Sun at the south node and in Sagittarius, and the Sun, sorry, it's Moon, and the Sun at the Gemini end of the north node. So this, the thing I talked about, the beliefs versus, you know, loosening our grip on being too serious about them and taking ourselves too seriously because of who we are, because we believe certain things and we are a certain way. So loosening that grip will, and kind of an impasse, if you like, because the positions are like that. There's kind of like push and pull and no one's giving way. And now we have this T-square, like a release valve into Pisces, first triggered by Jupiter, like I said, second time around by Neptune. and it's almost like we will be tempted to do Pisces, like really do Pisces, to release this kind of impasse and this, like to not lie, well, lie as well, but avoid and pretend and self-deceive the Sagittarius piece of us, and pretend that it doesn't need to be worked on, that we are all good and it's all fine. We will look to Pisces, we will do Pisces stuff, so we will tend to escape however we, like to escape, whether through drugs, through sex, through food, through Netflix binging, shopping, whatever our thing is, right? Talking, writing, workaholism, alcoholism, any of these escapes, right? We will feel like if we do that, we'll release this pull and push between Sag and North Node in Gemini, and so either we'll be doing that, or as I said, we'll be lying to ourselves and to others that everything's fine and we don't need to be doing any shadow work. This might not be our language, but essentially we'll be like floating in this kind of nebula of like, oh, it's okay, I don't have to do the work, right? I don't kind of like have the rose tinted glasses, because we will feel, if we did that, we will feel like we got a bit of respite, and the eclipses themselves are intense, so we will like be looking for that release, right? Now the first time on 26th of May, we have Jupiter squaring the axis and creating a T square, and Jupiter rules the South Node. So this piece about South Node and Sagittarius is particularly strong, and my advice, my kind of suggestion would be to look to the kind of to meet North Node in Gemini, to get to North Node in Gemini via Jupiter, which is Sagittarius. I use them interchangeably, but because it's a skip step, it's almost like or it's a stepping stone as well. We can use aspects of Sagittarius to bring us closer to North Node, and for me that is that the joy, the Sagittarius wisdom and good fortune and benevolence, and what makes him a good guru isn't the teaching itself, isn't the subject they're teaching. It's sharing its journey, learning journey. So that takes us back to when I spoke of South Node and how we get too identified with our beliefs, particularly either if we have South Node in Sagittarius, but also just currently we all are experiencing that nodal placement. So when we're too identified with our beliefs, we have stopped journeying. We may be journeying in circles. We may be just like going around we stay in the same village, i.e. a belief, right, that you have, whether it's a proper mystic religious belief, philosophical, pragmatic, practical, any set of values or beliefs, right, that you have. So you could be going in circles, or kind of going and visiting in different areas and having a sense like you might think you're traveling, you might think you're on the go, you might feel like you're not stuck, because you're kind of doing things, you're moving around, but it's still within those parameters that you have established, as it's like, this is how far I will go, this is who I am, and that is how Sagittarius ends up in its own, creates its shadowlands. The wisdom is to keep those always open, and actually keep moving from one belief to another. For a while, it's like that's so I'm thinking of Sagittarius. One of the things I love about Sagittarius, when I think of my friends, people I knew, or either have a really strong Sagittarius signature, is like they love to savor things, or rather to try different things. But unlike Gemini, who's just like little bite here and there, Sagittarius would really sit with you and have a good meal with you, this new meal, right, in this country, really go and explore the places and go deep and really study and understand. But so there is really depth to Sagittarius that's Gemini doesn't have or doesn't care for, and he shouldn't, and that's his thing, right? He doesn't have to. That's what gives him joy or what gives him power, right? But Sagittarius has the ability to go deep and get, but then he moves on and goes to another country. So if you have strong Sagittarius in you, and you you can say that you stay in one country and identify yourself with it, and really adopt those cultures and learn from those cultures, and then move on and start all over in a different country, very different, very unlike the one you just left. That is a healthy nomad, which is Sagittarius at its best. So back to Jupiter squaring it, the expansiveness and the benevolence and the bounty of Sagittarius or Jupiter is in this movement, is in this nomadic exploration. You immerse yourself in these experiences only to resurface and move on to the next thing. So if you can consider you leaving your current set of beliefs that might be pretty entrenched because it's South Node in Sagittarius, right? And consider it, calling the adventure aspect of like what it would be like to dismantle all this, or to just let go of it and not be attached to these beliefs because they're so old, and look what they're doing to me, they're keeping me too wrapped up in them, to identify with them. Consider letting go as a part of this adventure. And then it's like getting good shower and taking all the clothes off and putting some lighter new clothes that better fit as well, and traveling lighter to the next destination, next culture, next set of beliefs that you want to experience, immerse yourself in, but never stay there for too long. Longer than Gemini, much longer than Gemini, but not for as long as Sagittarius in the shadowscapes will do. And so just doing it, that kind of dance, and inviting your curiosity, Gemini, and the light-footedness, Hermes and Mercury, are portrayed with the what are they called? The wings at their feet. So that light step is a Gemini flavor movement, but Sagittarius very much employs it in its healthy expression, and only unlike Gemini, just doesn't stay in places for as long. But Sagittarius needs to remember to move on again. So that's how if you can think of, that's how I'm going to be considering Jupiter squaring this axis. That's how I'm going to be working with it, if you like. Then the second eclipse is, the solar eclipse in Gemini, which is a new moon in Gemini, and this was a Sagittarius full moon, will be squared by, and the axis will be squared by Neptune in Pisces. So this is what's interesting to me about Neptune squaring the nodal axis of the second solar eclipse is its Sabian symbol, because the degree it's squaring it from is the same degree it will station retrograde. In fact, it's already quite significantly slowing down. So it's in Pisces, which is its domicile, therefore it's in very strong energetic vibrancy or vibration, therefore powerful as Neptune goes, and then it's stationing, slowing down. So that's another kind of like there's extra weight to its presence in the skies at the moment, if you ask me. So the Sabian symbol is a tiny island, seems lost in the broad ocean, but its happy inhabitants have created a world of their own. And I was like, oh, that's like a definition of Neptune. So I see this in kind of like that there's a way to work with this, I would say, and then the way to be aware of and try not to do that, I would suggest. So this is a creative aspect, big time, because, well, Neptune is in general, and in fact, for me, that's the way to bring Pisces down to earth, Pisces, Neptune, right? They're just far too of another world energies to try to work with them through the lens of our 3D reality, except art. So, and I studied Neptune because I have strong 12th house and Neptune in 7th. So I've spent decades on figuring out how do I work with this energy. And art has been the most effective, most satisfying, most nourishing way of doing it. And it's a spiritual practice, at least for me. So obviously there is spirituality and also there's an aspect of or rather an expression of Neptune. Personally, I prefer art. It's to me, it's the cleanest spirituality as well, as opposed to any other kind of spirituality. So, but that's just me. But yeah, I would definitely advise, and I would still advise art versus spirituality. I would go for art. And if you're into spirituality more than art, I would actually invite you to maybe try something different, because Gemini, I mean, where we are headed, right? The North Node is, and it's curious. It's like Gemini will have billions of hobbies, and which essentially will not be hobbies. They will just be trying things a little bit and then moving on to the next thing. So to align yourself with general direction we're all headed, like where we're meant to be headed, where our evolutionary step is next, right? I would invite to kind of experiment and be curious about something you haven't done before. So if you're into spirituality, try art, and vice versa. So I'll be certainly doing more spirituality than art, and I'll talk about that in a moment. But that's a good way. So creating your own world, which with these kids, and being very happy at the children, inhabitants, rather. I don't know why I thought of kids, but so that's one way to work with, a good way, if you ask me. And the not so good way is to, it's a utopia. It's an escapism. It's daydreaming. And again, if you ask me, unless this becomes art, or you anchor it into something practical and nourishing for yourself, then it's just escapism and waste of yourself, life, that time. It's like living but not living. If you spend time creating sand castles, castles in the sand or castles in the air. Forgive me, I can't remember the exact. Basically, nothing. Something that's not tangible. Something that will just give you very momentary kind of rush, and will keep you away from living in 3D with all the heaviness and weight that living has, and it's a given that we will experience it that way. So that's kind of how I would work with this Neptune, and what I would be aware of or wary of. And Vesta. I want to talk about Vesta now. So T Square, as I said, is by definition is an unstable influence, because it's 3/4 of a square. A square would be the stable kind of, challenging but stable presence in one's chart, let's say. And so when we have a T Square, we are looking to what's missing, the missing leg. In this case, it's Virgo is a missing leg. And we happen to have Vesta in Virgo at the moment, and she will be squaring the nodal axis. And then I think at the lunar eclipse, solar eclipse, we have, it's a wider square. But even if it's not by orb or anything, I don't consider that at the moment. Or just in general, I'm not big on those technicalities anymore. I used to when I was, a younger astrologer. Because all we're looking is like how Vesta is what's missing. Virgo is what's missing. So anything Virgo related will help us stabilize the influence of this eclipse. And then we just look at what's going on in Virgo at the time of the eclipse, and we have Vesta. So yeah, let's use Vesta. Yeah, let's engage that energy. Let's embody Vesta during the eclipse, and therefore stabilize our experience of it. So Vesta has a very interesting, one of my favorite stories, myths, if you like. So she was, they were called Vestal Virgins, and what I love about that is that the name actually never connoted chastity. In fact, quite the opposite. They were probably the original prostitutes, if you like, or sex workers. Actually, it's a far better word, because they used their they used sex as a healing practice. So they would be, when soldiers came back from war, they would be sent to the Vestal temple to have sex with virgins, right? Before they were sent back to their homes. So in that sexual act, the priestesses, the virgins, the Vestal virgins, who were priestesses, right, were taking that trauma and transmuting it, and they had the skill to do that, to take the trauma and heal the body through sexual act. So that's one of the kind of the key kind of headline story for me when it comes to Vestal virgins. And the virgin piece is so therefore not about chastity, but it's about being whole unto herself. So they were the first, they were very respected, like then in Roman Empire times, when it kind of became a bit too patriarchal, and this whole sexual healing was shunned. They were still revered for keeping the fires going. So the fire is the kind of the kundalini, the energy of life, right? And they brought it down to, it was a hearth, the family home and all that, but they knew deep down that it was something far more important and bigger if these fires are kept. So it wasn't just about happy homes, but it's on the energetic level, the trauma was dealt with, was healed. But they were the citizens who had the right to vote, the only women who had the right to vote. They didn't have to marry, which again is unheard of. So they had privileges like men in the society at the time, which was a privilege, which meant that you made it, if you like. So this piece like a house. So they were independent. They by law and by reality of their life, even in Roman Empire, once the sexual act was kind of dismissed and hushed away and shamed, if you like, even, they still remained that status of being whole unto themselves, right? And then before, in the original story, if you like, the wholeness came that they didn't belong to these men that they use sexual acts on, or they even procreated to have goddesses or gods or semi-gods. Again, don't quote me on those exact terms, but there was always a point to those sexual acts, not just for pleasure. And that's the beauty. That's what I mean. She remains every time whole because she achieves what she needs to achieve through having that sexual intercourse, and nothing is being taken away from her by having it, and she doesn't feel like and nothing of her is left in the other person because they merged, right? So there's that beautiful, and this to me is Scorpio Taurus piece, really. But the Virgo piece is the sense of purity in that how the sex was used. So it's like sex is service. So that's what I mean by sex worker. It's service to oneself, to the other, and to the planet and to the society and the village or wherever they lived, but as a way of keeping you, as in the Vestal Virgin, whole, not that you're a victim of that practice. So that to me is the Virgo piece, and I think it's the missing piece between Scorpio and Taurus, and I think Virgo adds that. Kind of like it's an octave higher, that it adds the purity to the sexual act, in the sense that it's a service that is done willingly to do something good, but it requires a really kind of an evolved consciousness Pisces piece, right? Virgo Pisces axis. So back to Earth, right? And what do we do? How do we use this knowledge to help us through the eclipse season? So shame may be a big part that you'll be feeling. There may be shame coming up for all of us, and so two kind of pieces of shame: the Scorpio and the Virgo piece. The Scorpio piece of shame would be so the shame around one's desires, one's sexual, but also any other kind of desire for power, because that's what sex is, or any kind of desire is, to kind of feel, to get whatever you see that object of your desire, whatever you see that object has, by having it, you will feel like you have it too, so that you get the same power. Even if that's beauty, it's still power, right? Or if it's whatever. So it's shame around wanting that power, having those desires. And then the Virgo shame piece is about independence, this purity, that that you are whole unto yourself, that you when you do something, if you do it without wanting anything in return, or if you expect to be given something without being asked to give something in return because that person is whole to themselves, there's none of that gunky, sticky leftover of energetic unresolvedness, then we feel shame when we want that to be the case in our relationships. We may feel shame that we actually feel not needy, or a whole onto ourselves, and we, in that sense, not needy, for the sense of identity, for the sense of our worth, for the sense of who we are. We don't need others. It's great, but we don't need them, and we will engage with others who also feel whole onto themselves. So all of this is, we can feel shame around it because, oh, well, if I don't need her or him, they're gonna get upset. It's seen as being almost like a reverse selfishness. If you don't need anyone, it's like you're selfish, right? So there could be shame surrounding that. So how do we work with this Vesta in Virgo as the missing leg of the T square? I would say really examine your needs and what can you, as a way of understanding how unwhole you are yet or still. So no shaming, no blaming, just compassionately examine your needs. So that's the first, probably the biggest piece for me with this Vesta placement during the eclipses, because wherever we are unwhole or we are not whole, we are leaking, we are poisoning, too strong a word, but we are spilling ourselves and infecting others, even if we feel it's all out of the nicest things or love or whatever, however we excuse ourselves. So I would be compassionately vigilant and really probing with self-questioning and understanding where are you looking to others to fill in your gaps. So that's the first piece. The second piece is routine and daily practices that are cultivating wholeness. So Virgo is all about one step at a time. All earth signs are really, probably Capricorn is the only one that doesn't faint when it looks ahead and sees the vision of himself in 10 years time. But Taurus and Virgo, I can't even think of the end. I just need to do what needs to be done now. So otherwise I either get overwhelmed. So I wouldn't worry about your goal, your vision for the future, none of that. Really wouldn't. I would really focus on what keeps you whole, what makes you feel whole. And you may find, in fact, not just that you may find, I would suggest that you try by being solitary for longer than you typically are able to or have been able to. And then in that state of solitude, look for, it's almost like as I'm speaking, I'm seeing this kind of like almost like a big, like this is me, right? All these contours of my body. And there is a little of me inside. And this little of me in this solitude is just like kind of going, leaning this way. No, not comfortable. Let me try this angle. Maybe I need to do this. And just finding where you feel comfortable. And then just going, and this is it. This is the sweet spot. And in that sweet spot, that's the sensation of like, I don't need anything. I'm all set and good. So this is not mental kind of analysis, even though Virgo is very much that. But how do you, in your solitude, feel whole? And you first need to find it like energetically, and stay with it, and then allow, thoughts and ideas to define in words what it is, because yes, we do have North Node in Gemini, so words will will be helpful. But be careful, South Node in Sagittarius, to not to create some more new beliefs that you're gonna hang on to now for dear life. Remember that it's this journey of nomadic exploration and immersion, but then moving on again. So immerse yourself in this new found sense of wholeness that you just newly defined for yourself. And it might be till the next eclipses, but just remember that you will be asked to release that identification as well. So what kind of practical daily routines and practices will give you that sense of wholeness? And other kind of also very helpful potentially practices would be around self-nourishing and keeping oneself healthy, as opposed to indulging and overindulging, because that will be the pull. I mean, Vesta is an asteroid, so it's not. This is going to require effort. This is going to require you fighting against the pull and the push towards exaggeration, excess of any kind of form of escapism or indulgence. So if you can start a health regime, it's only 2 weeks window. So if you can kind of be motivated by that it's not entire life, you may be, you should be surprised how far that will take you at the end of the eclipse season. And if you can stick with it till the full moon in Capricorn, I'm pretty sure it's a Capricorn, after the Gemini new moon, then even better, because then even more so this new habit of looking after your body as a temple of service to you, and then as to service to others when you have a healthy body. I don't mean physically just healthy if you have actual diseases, or meaning illnesses that you can't just with good food or whatever cure, but to feel within your parameters and limitations, if you have any in terms of physical body, to have that sense of clean, that you're eating cleanly or feeding yourself cleanly. So this is not just food, this is energies as well. So develop, if you can, a practice of health during this window, 2 weeks or even 6 weeks, if you can stretch it to the full moon in Capricorn. So that would be another great way to focus on you, as opposed to get really entangled in all these other energies that are trying to get you outside of yourself and kind of confuse you, disorientate you. Now let me talk about Mercury. So Mercury rules the North Node, Jupiter rules the South Node, and it's squaring the axis on 26th of May, and I spoke of that. Mercury is doing a couple of things, is stationing retrograde at the first lunar eclipse on 26th of May, and then it will be conjunct the North Node at the second eclipse, the solar eclipse, new moon in Gemini. So it will be conjunct the new moon in Gemini. And so I want to take us back a little bit, and it's going to meet Venus on 26th of May, just a day or two after they'll have an exact conjunction, I think, day or two after the eclipse, but they're there already at the eclipse. And that's the piece, actually, I want to just take us back a little bit. So the Mercury conjunction Venus is, and then in Gemini, it's like hermaphroditus, a hermaphrodite. Forgive me if I'm not pronouncing. It's the concept, but it's also actually a mythological being, the product between Venus and Mercury, or Aphrodite and Hermes, and it's in Gemini, which is sort of two things coming together. So in hermaphrodites, we have male and female genitalia or sex in one body, and so Gemini, by definition of the two being together, is another metaphor for that kind of unity. It doesn't stand for hermaphrodites necessarily, but you will hear, and I certainly agree that wherever we have Gemini, we are at the least ambiguous sexually, or ambivalent, and very much possibly bi, and certainly it's that and rather. There's not or. It's like it's not or. It's like and. So you're adding things like Gemini is just like, oh, this and that and that and that. So there is multiplicities there as well, but being that it's Gemini, it's like the symbol is two pillars and twins and all that. So it's that sense of two things coming together, right? So all of this, the reason I want to take us back to Saturn Pluto Conjunction is that myth and that the symbolism and that metaphor is crucial to understanding what soul mandate we were all issued in January 2020 when Pluto Saturn conjunct in Capricorn. And I have a link below in the description, that presentation I did, call it my epic presentation, where I've done research and looking at the relationship between Pluto and Saturn, the next cycle of their relationship after this conjunction. I discovered that at every critical point, pivotal point, or like a first square opposition and the last square, Venus that year will be retrograding in Gemini. And I looked back to like centuries ago. I even found when last time we almost had it but didn't was during the Henry VIII in England, and that was and obviously I didn't look at the future because I just didn't have forever to be writing the presentation. But yeah, so this was unprecedented. I have not found this, and I've done solid research. It took me about 3 months to write the presentation. So Venus in Gemini, or hermaphrodites, or things coming together, finding one of the taglines I have for our future is that the future of sex is self-pleasure. And I still mean this, and I still think this is, and I think this will be particularly maybe obvious to everyone else once we have a North Node going into Taurus and we have a Taurus Scorpio axis, because from a certainly different language, and different possibly perspective on the same topic. So I think the world will catch up with me at that point, if not already. So we're asked to seek pleasure within, and I mean sexual as well, but certainly just pleasure full stop, right? Because as we clean up our relational act and become more and more conscious beings, and I'm already seeing this. I mean, I have no view of the whole world, obviously. I only have a very narrow window of the world that I inhabit and frequent. I'm already seeing this, that even in conscious relationships and connections, there is a sense of kind of Vestal dynamic, where it's really about sex becomes a service and a bigger thing than the couple itself, and it's really a tool for something else, not pleasure. I mean, that's like a incentive or a bonus or something, but it's and I foresee this evolution of relationships, sexual relationships in particular, to be sexless in a sense, and that the pleasure will be derived within, still in relationships, but the pleasure, there will not be a need to look outside of yourself to give yourself pleasure. No, I mean it's an obvious thing in many ways, because we all know that we can do that. No one really needs someone for pleasure. You can give it yourself, right? But I think we are at the stage where we are questioning, like, well, what's the point of us connecting with the lover? To share life, well, okay, but you can do that with friends. So the sex piece is still unresolved, and to dismiss it too quickly as like, well, yeah, we know we can do that, but we still want to do it with the other. But then why do you want to do it with the other? Is the service of something else? And actually, how satisfying is that for a relationship with that someone? It's almost like working with someone you love, and you just like a great partnership in doing something, having a project together, right? You don't really want to live with them. So I think we're really forking. We're really forking, maybe. We are unlearning and the way we used to mate, and the way and why we got together to mate, and why we stayed in relationships for lifetimes. And I think sex will become a very separate subject, like something we just don't do in relationships, or the relationships are not going to be, lovers are not going to be about sex in the way we know it currently. Yeah, I could talk about this forever, but so I won't. But yeah, so back to the Pluto-Saturn conjunction. That is one of the, because that message will be repeated over and over, and it's retrograde. So we are revisiting our relationships, Venus, right? With ourselves, because she rules, it's a Taurian Venus throughout. And then she's also ruling a Libra at the last quarter square in this Pluto-Saturn relationship up until, we're talking next 20 to 30 years. It's all in my presentation. So it's a relationship with the self, because it's a Taurian Venus. And being in Gemini is this hermaphrodites piece. And being that she is a retrograde, it's also hermaphrodites piece. And like I say, it's all explained in my presentation. But that message will be coming back to, and I think that's kind of the ultimate evolution of our species, because the 45th gene key, which is where, for the first three of these points, so the first at the conjunction Saturn Pluto, and then the first quarter square, and then opposition, Venus stations retrograde at 45th gene key. And one of the big pieces there is that we will really do away with the external sources of nurturing our bodies. And one of them is sexual pleasure. This is also food, as well as money. Like, so we will be, you may have heard of breatharians, and who don't eat, they just live off prana. That's our future. And then money will not be, hierarchies will be gone. That's the kind of future, that's the gene keys. So anyway, so I don't want to go too much into gene keys, but we are evolving. And so let me kind of bring it back to today. So the fact that we have North Node this time around in Gemini, and we had it for the last year, and then we have another one this winter or late autumn, is really the time to look at this piece about our sexuality and our connectedness with another for pleasure, also our relationship with ourselves and our own pleasure, and the source of that, and our agency in that, and our wholeness, back to Vesta, right? So and also interestingly, the degree of conjunction between Mercury and Venus is, let me read it. Sabian symbol is a gardener trimming large palm trees. So to me, this speaks of excess, and how we are trimming it down. So that's also the piece about South Node in Sagittarius. It's very much excess is being trimmed down. Excess in terms of our self-righteousness, our beliefs that we think, are the best, or we just, even when we, anyway, I talked about that. I'm not going to go into here. And this excess of it's like insatiable need for the outside world to do something for us, to fill in our gaps. So the Sabian symbol is, you often would think Venus and Mercury coming together is a lot of Venus happy things, and Venus is about indulgence. And this Venus is also Taurian Venus because we have no planets in Libra at the eclipses. So it is about self-indulgence and, you know, physical pleasures, sensuality. And yet the Sabian symbol of the conjunction is, and the Mercury station in retrograde, which is the same degree, is to trim the excess. And what more trimmed of excess is there than hermaphroditus? So nothing's reaching out and expanding out and wanting and just desiring this other thing out there, because he has everything that he needs in already. Okay, now let me talk about Mars. So Mars is in Cancer, and because of that, he answers to the Moon, because Moon rules Cancer, and Moon is, you know, the integral, critical, key aspect and element of the eclipses. I mean, Sun is as well, but Moon is too, and also the nodal axis is essentially the nodes of the Moon. So it answers to the eclipse, basically. Mars does, and Mars really doesn't like to answer to anyone. The only boss that can be of his, the only one that can be the boss of him is Pluto, and he will happily take Pluto's orders. In fact, that's who he lives for. He lives for Pluto, but not for Moon, or the Moon. So, which is partly why Mars is in fall in Cancer, is really not its place. Well, just partly. I mean, that's not why he's not happy in Cancer. Sorry. Anyway, and then he's not happy that he's answering to the Moon, right? And so, like I say, he's not happy. But more importantly, and this is, I feel, what most of us have been feeling most, unless you have really meaningful aspects in your Sagittarius, you know, in Sagittarius, right, for yourself personally, but collectively, and I know for me as well, and what I've been observing is that this is the piece that we are all feeling the most, because with Mars, there's no subtlety. There's just like, when Mars activates something, or when it's getting ramping things up, or just we all can we just we can't miss it. We get all swept up by it or under it. And so currently it's applying opposition to Pluto, and so this is really who he wants to be in connection with. And so opposition is a pull and push, and the exact opposition will happen on 6th of June, and Pluto is retrograde currently. So, I mean, Pluto is the boss, really, the boss of Mars, and now they're gonna meet, and something will be revealed. Oppositions are like the full moons, right? Something will be illuminated, and I reckon or say that Mars will get it will be like a review, like a performance review between him and Pluto. And I think the piece, as in where Pluto will be judging and marking Mars, and so because it's in Cancer, this will be about maturity, emotional maturity more than anything, but also our unresolved anger from childhood. And so Mars in Cancer just wants to throw a tantrum, doesn't give a toss about who is gonna knock about by, you know, throwing a tantrum, or who's gonna get upset. It has this rage, and it just wants to let it rip. And if Pluto was not retrograde, I would be less inclined to say this, but because Pluto is retrograde, is almost like retrograde. They mean, amongst other things, they're an invitation for us to figure out what that archetype means to us. So it becomes a very personally flavored archetype when we have a retrograde in our planet, in our chart. So when Pluto is retrograde, all of us are figuring out who is the authority, who is the boss, you know, of my child, right? Mars in Cancer. And so what we are probably seeing our finding that we are doing is that we are projecting this anger and giving our power away to our parents, our caretakers, the authorities that we depend on. Could be bosses at work or wherever else, you know, partnerships even, you know. And we are raging at them, even if we're not necessarily having literally doing that to their face, but inside we're feeling all these feelings. And really, Pluto retrograde opposing Mars is demanding of Mars to find to get the power back, meaning to find a way to resolve those emotions without interacting or without bringing in these external authorities into the dialogue with itself. But this is not to say that we don't engage with those external individuals, let's say, but it's how we engage. So we need to employ greater sensitivity, Cancer, but also self-compassion for ourselves. But once we do engage, to be more sensitive and compassionate and gentle with those others, if we want to, if we need to engage after we have done this work that Pluto is asking of us, retrograde. It's like, don't give your power away. Don't give your, you know, once you are angry at someone, you have literally given them your power away. So first figure out what that is, why do you have to do that? And then if after you have resolved all that, you still feel the need to, you know, have a conversation with those other people, you need to do it from a far gentler and softer place, is what, or rather, you know, that doesn't have to be mushy kind of place. It's more about being mature. So the whole Cancer Capricorn axis is about maturity, emotional maturity, and being your own authority, which is, you know, what Pluto in Capricorn retrograde is currently asking us to be our own authority in deciding who gets to make us angry, and if they do, why that is, and do I need to really speak to them about it, or can I resolve this on my own? And yet this will be probably the toughest thing to do this eclipse season. So I just want to read out the Sabian symbols. So for Mars, a violent storm in a residential canyon filled with valuable homes. I mean, this is all Cancer. I mean, it is in Cancer, but still. And then Pluto degree. This is the degree at 26th degree of either Cancer or Capricorn. So Pluto is a mountain pilgrimage. So you can see already that there's this juxtaposition of this rage, you know, this desire for violence to just destroy something because it's just not working, right? And then you have this Pluto on the top of the mountain on a pilgrimage, soul pilgrimage, to find his own sense of, not just sense, but idea of what power is. What is power? What is power to you? And yeah, and if you look at how you are acting during this eclipse season, but in general, how you're acting is looking at your Mars, is you looking at your Mars, and Mars is essentially a messenger of Pluto at any time of the day, eclipse or not, is how you know your relationship to power, because Pluto is power. So watching your Mars, your actions, you know what your Pluto is wants from you. Yeah, so there's that piece. But during this eclipse season, it's particularly pertinent to be asking, who do we give our power away? And isn't that really what we are angry about, right? I think that's at the core of our rage, that we have given a power away to those people, our parents maybe, or to friends, or to you know, colleagues, or to bosses, unnecessarily. It's like, that's rather the anger, right? Is why did we do it? So stop giving it away. But that might be very tough given the Sabian symbols. And then at the second eclipse, so after this exact position happens on the 6th of June, so on 10th of June we have the final eclipse, the solar eclipse in Gemini, new moon in Gemini. And Mars at that point is at the end of Cancer, so the anaretic degree of Cancer, 29 degree. And so that's a crisis point. So all of this violent storm, canyon, homes, family, our child, basically, this rage that we carry from childhood for all the wrongs that we were done by whoever, could be coming to a head. And but like I say, just remember Pluto in Capricorn retrograding. You need to find a way of owning the anger and reclaiming your power, because anger is always giving power away. Even when we end up sitting down and using the anger to have a conversation to change something, the conversation can't be angry. Anger is always a powerless state of being. It can fuel your actions, but the action needs to be either Cancer-like or Capricorn-like in this instance, so mature and structured and productive and safe for both people. Never anger can be a good fuel to resolve something, or to know that something you don't want, don't like, but you cannot bring anger into a conversation if you want to own your power, if you want to have agency, and if you want to resolve something. The Sabian symbol for this Mars is a daughter of the American Revolution. And I wasn't sure what I wanted to say about that, but actually I think there is something promising about that. So it's a daughter, so it's a young, something young, right? And on the back of a revolution. So maybe it's inevitable. Maybe we're just not equipped at this stage in our life. And I'm speaking for myself, really, regarding whatever issue you're facing with this particular face-off between Mars and Pluto. And you might, there might be this storm and the destruction that will happen. And that's usually, kind of a revolution, right? It's in like something gets thrown and something else, sadly, typically similar, just called different, is replaced by it, or replaces. I mean, so either way, there will be possibly some kind of major upheaval. But there's a sense of promise with this 29th degree, the daughter, right? And daughter being kind of Cancer, but also Mars being that it's the younger Gemini as well. I mean, those are kind of, younger people kind of vibes and energies. Something new, right? Something new and promising on the back of this potential destruction that we might not be able to be wiser about this time around. And another one I want to talk about a little bit is Chiron. So Chiron is sextiling North Node, and trining South Node. So I thought this was interesting because of the two different aspects, essentially, and they are different. And I'm not someone who likes to think of sextiles as easy at all. They're not difficult, they're not challenges of the kind of square kind or opposition kind, but they're not trines. And so sextiles are like mild irritation and overstimulation, which can be a mild irritation when you're overstimulated. Or not. That can be equally enjoyable. Often for me it is, but equally I experience the other end of it being actually an irritant. And then trine is like, it's easy, it flows, there's no resistance. That's the idea. So the reason I love this is because it really sits well with it helps the evolutionary trajectory that we're all going through. And why that is that because the whole Sagittarius piece, it's made easier for us to work through our Sagittarius shadow, whatever that is in our chart. And it's, like I said, it's essentially all about beliefs. Will be held by Chiron, meaning we will be able to look at our wounds, Chiron, with greater ease because of the trine. So all the wounding that we have around beliefs and the reason we chose those beliefs because they saved us from something that was wounding us, we will be able to uncover more easily and effortlessly this time around. So I encourage unpicking your wounds to do with your beliefs. And then the sextile to Mercury is, or rather, sorry, Gemini, you know, North Node, and then bear with me, and the Sun in Gemini and the North Node in Gemini, is that the poking, the sort of overstimulation that we might be experiencing is that we would be possibly looking for like answers and collecting data, like trying to really understand this wound, and relying again on external information, us collecting the information. So be watchful of that, because really you'd be confusing the sort of sextile and trine. You want to separate. It's like the sextile, you want to work with a wound and use this trine to do that, unpick it. And as long as your unpicking of the wound feels like you're in the wound, you're not distracted by like, what's the theory about this wound? What's the psychology here? What's the... try not to think too much, right, while you're unpicking the wound. And then your sense of identity as it emerges as new, so the Sun, you know, and sextile in Chiron, in Gemini, and the North Node, will be emerging, the new identity, right? That might just be a bit... like irritating, might not be the best word here, but what I mean, it's like it's an North Node is that far away, you know, we're not exactly sure what that is, and we are a bit, really, is that me, right? So that's how this sextile might play out. You will be seeing yourself in a way that it's actually possibly even just irritating you, like, oh, I don't like that me. But know that if that's happening, that's a different kind of wound that you then need to look into. So that's a Chiron sextile, right? But it's not that you haven't done the work. You have moved away and you have encountered possibly a different kind of wound. Or if you don't feel like as much irritated with this new you that's emerging after you've been cleaning your wound up, right? You might just feel a bit like unsure and what is it, and just lean into that, basically. Okay, and lastly, I want to say a few words about retrogrades. So I spoke about Pluto retrograde, so I'm not going to go there. We have Saturn retrograding, just going retrograde just a couple of days before the first lunar eclipse, and we'll stay there, you know, on the same degree throughout for those couple of weeks. And that degree is, let me just read it out to you. It's train entering a tunnel, and it may feel like a bit disorientating. I mean, eclipses are disorientating in themselves already. This Saturn is actually trining the South Node, sorry, the North Node, and sextiling the South Node. So it's essentially in a kind of supportive aspect to the nodal axis, but because of the Sabian symbol and just Saturn in general, it's a time to revisit who we are in the world and what sort of legacy we want to leave, and our journey towards the peak of our life, although we have many peaks, but I mean, like this kind of climbing the mountain being, you know, evolving, let's say, right, another way to put it. It's like we're now in the reviewing phase of that, but also, like I said, with all the retrogrades, it's essentially figuring out what does it mean to us, success? What does success mean to us individually? And also external authorities. So we kind of connected to the Pluto retrograde in Capricorn, being that it's in Capricorn, obviously, is the connection there. And Pluto is ruled by Saturn at the moment, well, for as long as it's in Capricorn. And so this kind of quest for inner authority, and is emphasized, or kind of another signature, another message, or the same message told twice is in Saturn retrograding as well. And it's also going to be about, being that it's in Aquarius, like our long-term plans and our vision for our future, individual future, and our goals, like, and our sense of belonging. When we are authentic, are we authentic yet, and have we found where we belong, being true to who we are? So these things will come up for review, because we may have been feeling like we arrived there, and we probably have moved away from the older version of that setup, but we might find ourselves like changing and just going in a different direction after the retrograde, which will be in October. And till then, from now till then, we'll be reviewing this. In terms of the eclipse, I think it kind of supports. It's a really big like major nod to the North Node. It's like the road is clear, even if it's in the tunnel. Did I say, sorry, that that's its Sabian symbol? I'm sure I said it. A train entering a tunnel, right? So even if it is, we just need to kind of follow our gut and trust that we will come out. The tunnel is very structured, path, right? That we can't actually fall off. We can't get damaged. We can just hit the wall here and there, but we can't not go forward. So I love that metaphor, but we might feel like we don't know what we're doing because we don't see clearly. And again, that's eclipses, but remember that will be end of June and early July. It will move from the degree 13 and it will move to 14. So this will clear. I think we will feel like we have arrived at the end of that tunnel, and it's the sort of Gemini North Node is the end of that tunnel, or rather, that's the tunnel, right? It's a tunnel is in fact probably South Node in Sagittarius. No, that's probably the best metaphor. South Node in Sagittarius and North Node in Gemini. So that's the tunnel. And we might be feeling fears from the South Node in Sag that, are catching up with us, or something is haunting us from the past as we try to get away from it. So there may be that in that darkness of the tunnel. But my point ultimately is, if you're feeling any of this, I would say fear not, because of the reasons I described. It's actually safe. It is safe to travel through the tunnel. Just remember that you will come out eventually. And then the other piece there is, in terms of retrogrades, is that Jupiter and Neptune are turning retrograde after the eclipse. There are Neptune, because he moves so slowly, he's already on the degree that will retrograde, which is 23 degrees of Pisces. And I read out that the Sabian symbol, but Neptune is Jupiter is not. So I think he's retrograding on the 2nd degree, and by the time we end with the eclipse, I think he's still at the 1 degree. Anyway, they're slowing down. And like I say, Neptune is almost stationed already, or almost retrograde. They go retrograde maybe a couple of weeks, 10 days to a couple of weeks after the eclipse. But I think what that will be, to me, it's almost the nod, and I can't think off my head now whether there is much contact between Neptune and the nodal axis for the next eclipse season in autumn winter. Possibly, probably, I don't know for a fact, but it's almost like we will be revisiting these themes of Neptune and the Pisces. So whatever escapist tendencies and excessive Jupiterian, Sagittarian themes we haven't dealt with during this eclipse season, I think we'll be asked to deal with them after the eclipse. And if not, then if we have done the work during the eclipse that we needed to do, then I think the retrograde period will. It's like now we clear the room, we tied it, we did general spring cleaning, and now we're left with a blank canvas, or the clean slate. And now with the retrogrades, we are then doing the work of retrogrades for themselves, right? Not in relation to the work not done during the eclipse. And doing the work for retrogrades themselves is about figuring out what kind of spiritual nomad am I? What kind of traveler am I? What kind of explorer, this is all Jupiter, am I? What beliefs actually light me up? What beliefs are new and exciting to me? What is the next culture? And by culture I mean literally an established set of beliefs, an established formed societal group, right? What next one of them is like on my map to go and immerse myself in, and then really experience it in its fullness, and then move on. So what are those things? So we'll be like revisiting what Jupiter means to us, and then with Neptune we will be redefining what, if we've done the shadow work now for the eclipses, the retrograde will make us just wonder and redefine for ourselves, how do we bring that spirit, that sense of, how do we not just bring, but how do we keep that alive in us, the sense of connectedness to the bigger whole, right? How do we keep inspired or stay inspired? And what does it mean to us? What inspires us, you know? And what kind of redemption do we seek, and why? And can we, you know, how do we go about getting it? And obviously, for me at least, how do I bring that to my 3D world? Because if we stay too much up there in the 12th house Neptune layers and levels, or maybe this is generational, maybe the younger generations are far more at home in that realm. Maybe I'm showing my age here, but or maybe it's actually all my earth, probably. So if you're like me and need more earth, then yeah, you might want to be reconsidering, like, how do you bring your Neptune needs into your reality without dissolving your reality, but enhancing it. And that's it. So hopefully this was helpful, and yeah, remember my school if you're interested. It will be linked there below in the description. I hope you join me, and yeah, I'll see you on the other side. I'm usually kind of quiet during the eclipses as I do my work, but it's a Gemini eclipse as well, so I might be chattier than usual. Okay, take care.